and everything's gonna be right, right. I wanna have a good time.
When I first met the girls, they were living over on a small street in North Hollywood, and small apartment, but they were moving into a house, so they had their instruments out, and I thought, geez, instruments, these girls play? And they started to play, and I thought, my gosh, they're fantastic. So this is the first time that I had ever seen or heard girls playing drums, guitars, bass, all that, and singing rock and roll. And it really changed the way I thought about stuff, and I thought, this is something special.
We were the first girls rock band. We have the shows, we have the records, we have the tours, everything. We went on tour with the Righteous Brothers, and I think that tour was in 1967, I think, when we went on tour with the Righteous Brothers, and we played our own instruments, and it was great. We were the first.
My name is Kim Fowley. I'm the necessary evil in the Klingers story. Look at this face. Their mother hated my guts.
Hi, I'm Patsy Klinger Walker. I was part of a group called the Klinger Sisters, and later during the 60s, we became the Klingers, a rock and roll band, the first female rock and roll band, which was pretty cool.
Now, here's something interesting. Art Lindson was the co-manager of the Klingers, and he later was executive producer of the Runaways movie. And when we talked about the Runaways movie, we both agreed privately that the Klingers were first. Now, so what was the similarity between the Runaways and Klingers? Under 18-year-olds playing rock and roll in a loud, aggressive way, with stories about their audience who were young or youth obsessed. And then the other group were the Bangles. I think the Klingers were more like the Bangles than they were the Runaways, because the Bangles had great harmonies.
My name is Melody Klinger. I came from a wonderful family of 9 children. We grew up the first part of our life in Utah, Orem, Utah, and then we moved to Kentucky and Ohio, and at a very, very early age, when I was, I don't know, 3, 4, probably 4, I started harmonizing with the radio, and my mom realized that I was harmonizing with the radio, and she was like, wow. So she kind of started singing with me, and we started being a duet together. And I don't know, it just kind of snowballed from there. All of a sudden, pretty soon, my sister Peggy, then Patsy, we all started singing together in church, of course. Everybody starts in church. And the first time we ever sang as a group, Melody, Peggy, Patsy, and Debbie, we sang at the Orem Farm Festival in Orem, Utah.
We started out moving down from California, from Utah to California. My dad's career was going great in Utah, but every time we performed, people wanted us to take a chance and go to California and make it big. So ultimately, that's exactly what we did do. Mom and Dad packed us all up, and we, along with our wonderful coach, Val Hicks, who at the time was also vocal coach for the Osmond Brothers, we packed up and we moved to California. We started out singing 4-part harmony, barbershop, Sweet Adelines. We had a lot of wonderful engagements when we first came that Val had booked for us.
From there, we were singing with Val Hicks a lot. He was working with us, and we went to a show that the Osmond Brothers had, which was called the Andy Williams Show. So while we were there singing their show, they said after the show was over, come on girls, sing a song with us. So we sang a song that we had performed with them many times called These Will Be the Good Old Days 20 years from now. And from that show, from that little audition type thing that we did, we started doing the Danny Kaye Show after that. First we did the Osmond Show, or the Andy Williams Show with the Osmonds. Then we did our own show, which we called our own show, but it was really the Danny Kaye Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Osmond Brothers and the Klinger Sisters. Excuse me, you go right ahead.
Now it just arrived in a brand new year. 62 is gone, we've been. If you feel like a
No need to worry, here's the reason why.
These will be the good old days 20 years from now. These will be the good old days, the ones we're living now. There'll be memories of many friends from back in our hometown. And we'll remember our first dance and our first evening gown. For these will be the good old songs 20 years from now. Songs that live in our memory and always go on. We'll always live like we're still going strong. Make the most of every day. Stop and cry and keep smiling, come what may. And these will be the good old days 20 years from now. Just 20 years from now. All together now. One more time. Make the most of every day. Stop to cry and keep smiling, come what may. Lord and I and these will be the good old days 20 years from now.
It was an unbelievable time of variety shows. Danny Kaye was there at CBS. Red Skelton was next door in his studio. Judy Garland was across the hall doing her show. And Liza Minnelli would come over and take us to the commissary and have hot dog sandwiches. So it was really a fun time for us as little kids getting to experience that. We didn't really know how incredible it was being with all these huge stars, but we enjoyed it and grew from it, and then we went into rock and roll music.
My very first experience with the Klingers, I was a page at CBS, and I was assigned to the Danny Kaye show, and it was in black and white, and they were performers. They did a whole bunch of them, and they were always on at the end of the show. At the sit-down spot, which you call the sit-down spot, which was an honor to be in, because people in the sit-down spot were people like Ella Fitzgerald or Harry Belafonte, and of course the Klingers.
We had this wonderful opportunity. We had performed a song called "Oh Baby Mine" on his show that season, and where he brought in 3 studio singers and himself. He was the baritone. He had a guy that did the deep low bass and a tenor, and it was just fantastic. And then we were the female quartet, and we did it as a double quartet. And so they chose that song and another song for us to record and perform with Danny on that album for Rambler.
I thought I would develop a quartet of my own. So you know we have one now?
Good.
Really? What are you doing? No, leave it up. It looks nice like that. Put yours up now, too. Here. Come on in, fellas, because we want to do our little quartet work for them. All right, peel off, Jay.
I sing a high tenor.
And I sing a second tenor.
And I sing a rich, warm, round, luscious, beautiful, dumb baritone.
And I sing a deep, low bass.
And I sing a deep, low bass. Well, let me hear you start, yours.
Oh, baby mine.
I get so that's the part I'm crazy.
Oh, baby mine.
Oh, baby mine.
Oh, baby mine.
Oh, baby mine. Here we go.
Oh, baby mine.
I get so lonely when I dream about you. Can't do without you. That's why I dream about you. If I could only put my arms about you, life would be so fair.
All right, you turn.
Okay, just give us the keynote back there.
I sing a high tenor.
And I sing a second tenor. And I sing a rich, warm, round, robust, wonderful ridiculous dumb baritone. And I sing the deep low bass. Oh baby mama,
I get so lonely when I dream about you. Can't do it without you. That's why I dream about you. If I could only put my arms about you, life would be so fair.
If you were there,
We two could hug and kiss and never tire. I'm on fire. You are my one desire. I get so lonely when I dream about you. Why can't you be there? Tossing and turning in my slumber
and
holding you it seems.
I give you kisses without number,
But only in my dreams.
oh baby mine.
I get so lonely when I dream about you. Can't do without you. That's why I dream about you. If I could only put my arms about you, life would be so.
life would be so.
Life would be so fair.
I remember how damn cute they were. They were the cutest people in the whole world, and Danny just loved them. He loved it because those sit-down spots weren't written, and it allowed him to be Danny Kaye, which he did so well. I mean, he could rub noses with the kids, and he could tease them, and he could giggle with them, and he could make fun if they pronounced the word wrong. He just loved them.
Danny Kaye was a wonderful man. We used to go to his home and rehearse. It was wonderful, and he was a great, great man.
We were able to get a record contract, and we signed with VJ Records. And at the time, they were a very big record label. In fact, they had just signed, released a big hit, maybe you've heard of it, Twist and Shout, and I saw her standing there, on a subsidiary label called Tolly Records. In those days, it was live, and you had to sing right along with the orchestra. I remember Glenn Campbell, who was the most awesome guy you could have ever met. He was playing guitar for us on that first record date. And David Gates actually wrote one of the songs that we recorded called I'm Your Puppet, and he also played piano. He taught us our arrangement, broke down the vocal parts, and it was just an amazing day. I think Jimmy Haskell also was part of the group that arranged for us, but it was just really fabulous. And at the end of the day, we had 4 solid records. The Lipstick Song, Golly Mom, Shoop Shoop De Doop, Ram-a-lam-a Ding Dong, Yeah Yeah Yeah, and I'm Your Puppet.
Tell me that you want me back in your arms. Well, baby, I'm telling you, if you really want me and all of my charms, there's one thing you have to do. Whisper softly in my ear all the things I like to hear, like sha-da-da-da, shoot, shoot, dee-dum, ra-dee-dum. And you mean it when you say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Baby, I'll come running back in your arms to stay. Now I know that you think it's funny when I say don't call me honey, like all the other boys do. But I would rather hear a word the kind no other girl has heard coming from you. You tell me that you want to kiss me again. Well, baby, I'm telling you, if you want to kiss me like you did then, there's one thing you gotta do. Whisper softly in my ear all the things I like to hear, like sha-da-da-da, shoot, shoot.
because of the years of being on the variety shows, we would be sent out as a family act, the Klinger sisters rather than the Klingers.
Bobby and I found out firsthand how well the Klingers were accepted by the audiences. We toured with the girls. It was a Righteous Brother tour, and I think our agent, Jerry Perencio, I think the girls were signed with Jerry, and we thought it was a great idea because we were kind of first as white guys singing black, or blue-eyed soul, they called it. We were called the Blue-Eyed Soul Brothers, so we kind of opened that door. So we didn't feel it was our obligation or anything, but we thought it was very cool to be able to take the first girl group out there on the road, and our fans absolutely loved them. I mean, loved them to death. And we did a lot of colleges, I believe, back then, and but our fans absolutely loved the girls, and I'm sure all audiences love the girls.
The reason why we went into rock and roll music was we were playing the grandstand show at a fair, and we had quite a few people there, but there was a rock and roll band over in a small venue in another part of the fairgrounds, and all of the kids went to see them, and we were thinking, dang, we gotta change our whole way of singing. We need to go into rock and roll music.
For a long time we were singing as a cappella group. We were little a cappella singers, but in the backs of our minds and deep in our hearts was this desire to be rock and rollers. We wanted to be a band. We wanted to play. Our dad was kind of fighting with us the whole way through. He kind of wanted us to go country, but we wanted to go rock and roll.
We got our instruments. We came home from school one day, and my dad had all these instruments in the living room, and each of the girls went and picked the instrument that they wanted, and I was the youngest, so I got last pick, and the bass was what I got. And it's really funny because in grade school, I had wanted to be in the orchestra, and so I picked the bass is what I wanted to play. Well, here I am, a little, I don't know how old you are in 5th grade, 11, and I wanted to play this great big bass. Well, the orchestra leader said, there's no way that you can do that with your little teeny hands. So he strung a cello with bass strings and taught me how to play the bass on a cello with bass strings. And so I was always destined to be the bass player, even though I got last pick. So it was kind of fun that I got to be the bass player.
Look at this face. Their mother hated my guts. She always felt I was the devil and I was Satan, and I was bringing some slime and bacon grease into the home in the San Fernando Valley. I used to show up with Michael Lloyd picking my face as I'm vulgar. Now look, she knew I was smart, but she didn't approve of my technique of delivering my intelligence, especially when it came to the care and feeding of the purity of the daughters that she had. Now the husband was a different story. Mr. Klinger secretly enjoyed it when I argued with his wife, because he wouldn't do it and he didn't do it. And if he did, he didn't do it in front of me. Maybe his children can comment on it elsewhere in the movie. But you had a Maggie Thatcher, Prime Minister of England type of mom, who should have had a shotgun in her hand or a pitchfork, because any male under 30 who showed up was obviously there for immoral and horrifying reasons.
I think we hit one of our greatest shows was Las Vegas. We played Las Vegas for 7 weeks with Ed Ames and Scoey Mitchell at the Riviera Hotel, and we did a phenomenal show. We walked out first with these gorgeous gowns on, sang a couple of songs, then we tossed the gown to the side, had little golden braided chains over these short little dresses with cute little heels. We were hot, and we went to our instruments. The curtain opened and our instruments came out and the audience went nuts. So we finished off the show with our instruments, and I'll never forget looking over to the side of the stage and seeing my dad just over there, so excited that we were playing our instruments and doing such a great job. It was a wonderful experience that I'll never forget.
As I had been brought up in a very nice, wonderful family, great-grandmother, grandmother, and mother, I knew the importance of family. And so when I met the girls and saw the love and care and attention that really existed within the family, I thought, you know, this is a special environment, and these girls are allowed to grow and do the things that they are dreaming about, and their dad and their mom are trying to support them in every way possible. So I was naturally attracted to it just from a family standpoint. It wasn't just business, it was personal.
The Clingers, what was good about them? They were the first all-girl rock and roll band in the world. What's a girl? Someone under 18. And some of them were under 18, and some of them who were over 18 were so emotionally immature that they might as well have been under 18. So much for jailbait. But this wasn't jailbait, this was church girls with guitars daring to play the devil's music. That was appealing to me. The first single on Columbia Records was Gonna Have a Good Time. That's shallow and that's decadent. I'm sure the mother wasn't happy about it.
The thing that was exciting was that these weren't girls that just held the instruments. They actually played them. Debbie played bass as if she was angry at it. Patsy hit those drums harder than most guys. I was afraid to get too close to her. Melody was great on guitar. I mean, and of course, Peggy played keyboards. So they really had the whole thing down, and it wasn't just a rudimentary thing. It was like fantastic. They actually, you know, played. As I said before, this was outside my experience. I hadn't seen anything like this, and it was just fascinating.
Peggy was the bad girl. Patsy was the Doris Day good girl. Debbie was the Bridget Bardot, and Melody was the Virgin Queen. Probably by now they've been intimate with somebody, but probably not during those days, which is their sins to confess or their joys to celebrate in this movie.
Oh, baby, baby, you're on my mind. The folks are going and the place will be mine. Oh, baby, baby, wanna be with you. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put a call to you right now, yeah. I rock me again tonight, and everything's gonna be right. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. The rock and roll music's gonna play all night. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. The rock and roll music's gonna play all night. Patty's on the drums and she's right on time. Oh, Debbie playing bass and she sure looks fine. Oh, Melly play the guitar just for you. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put a call to you right now, yeah. Rock me again tonight, and everything's gonna be right. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. The rock and roll music's gonna play all night. I'm gonna have a good time, I'm gonna have a good time tonight, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. The rock and roll music's gonna play all night. I'm gonna have a good time tonight. The rock and roll music's gonna play all night. Can't
when you see the Clingers on the Smothers Brothers, and then you see the Runaways, who I produced 7 years later, in 1975, you realize in 1968 the Clingers were pioneers. But they had the Beatles to compete with, and they had the Rolling Stones to compete with, and the Jackson 5 and the Monkees, and it was a fertile time in pop music. So possibly if the Clingers would have shown up during one of the droughts of rock and roll, when nothing was going on in the youth market, they might have had a different approach, but quite frankly, no one could care, because women were eating granola then and growing hair under their armpits, not shaving their legs, and free love and all of that stuff. And the girls at the time they all looked like Janis Joplin and Earth Mothers, like Grace Slick. And where do Four Mormon Virgins fit into that formula?
You know, if I was to go out and put a rock group together, I couldn't think of a group that was better put together than these four lovely young girls called the Clingers.
Well, the Clingers were very, very respected as singers, as musicians, as professionals. As young as they were, they just they must have had a great they must have had great parents. I know they had great parents. We knew the parents, and I think the father traveled on tour with us, and so they were very respected. Why wouldn't you? There was no. There's always people in this business that you can have reasons to say, I don't. No, there was no reason not to respect the Clingers. They had it all covered.
So my friend Kim, that I've known, since I was 12 or 13, has an interesting view that perhaps one of the things that held us back was that the girls were, maybe a little too safe or a little too nice They needed to be edgier because it was rock and roll, and maybe that was a component. But you got to remember that this was like 1968, 1969. Things were a lot less edgy then. So, you know, I suppose there would be an argument that if they had been a little tougher, maybe that would have helped. But, you know, image was different then. You didn't have MTV, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have anything of that sort. You just had still pictures and the occasional guest shot on a television show. So I think that, again, they had the right goods. They had it in them. But perhaps the overall environment in the music community wasn't as accepting as it is now in terms of girls playing and singing. So I don't think it's a question of being too nice. I don't think you can ever be too nice.
It would have been just a novelty if they were just a family that got together and sounded okay, and it was kind of commercial and whatever. But like I say, these girls were very good.
Rock and roll music is based on Satan, the devil, superficial sex, shallowness, decadence, evil, having a good time, hatred, fighting. Rock and roll is an outgrowth of redneck, white, racist, meeting with black, prisoners, converging together through white suburban thieves, otherwise known as white kids playing rock and roll. So you have rednecks and rapists and murderers and knife-toting criminals coming up with a art form that these Mormon girls decided to pursue. Whether they knew or not where all of this came from culturally, I don't know.
So this is the definition of the all-girls rock band, the first one. We all had to play our own instruments, which we did. We all had to sing, which we did. And we had to have a record contract, which we did. And we were on television. I mean, it's documented that we were on television on the Smothers Brothers show, I mean, you name it. We were on it at that time, 9th Street West, all of those shows.
And we hit all of the top college campuses all over the East Coast.
Chuck Veras had a television show called Operation Entertainment. We were able to be on that program. It was great. We went to Army bases, Air Force bases, military, all over. We went to one in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. It was an Air Force base. We went to Edwards Air Force Base in California, and we went to Port Hueneme.
Well, unfortunately, we never got over to Vietnam to perform to the groups, but we did a lot of bases where the kids, you know, and boy, they were kids. They, again, the generation gap. They were like 18, 19, 20, and I'm, you know, 25, 26, and that seemed like I was an old man compared to these guys. And so we did a lot of bases, and we did the show. One or two bases with the Klinger sisters, and boy, and I bet those surface guys love those girls. You're there for them, and you're there to lift their spirits. They're just going to be shipped off to Vietnam, so just do your show, try and lift them up, and because if you looked at these kids in the face and knew what was in front of them, and to hear like guys going, yeah, man, it was inspiring. It was, you know, just give you a chill. And we just didn't know. We didn't know until years later that our music had an impact on anybody, first off, but an impact on guys over there fighting for our country was amazing to us, and what an honor, you know, and these guys coming to us saying, we just want to thank you. Jimmy, Christmas, we're sitting there making a lot of money, safe at home, putting our cute clothes on and going out and doing shows, and these guys are fighting for our country. We thank you, and we still thank you today.
I remember Terry Melcher and his father, Marty Melcher, coming to our home. Marty at the time was our manager and Terry was our producer. We had signed his record company, ABC Equinox, so we were recording with Terry at that time. So we used to go to Terry's home, which happened to be in Benedict Canyon, and he would be playing the piano and we'd all be hanging around singing. There would be Bruce Johnston of the Beach Boys and other people would be there, Candice Bergen, his girlfriend at the time.
Terry, I know he had to have been kidding, but of course when he presented the idea for our album cover, we were all just like, are you serious? He wanted us to be, literally, this is what he said, in a forest, no clothes, just the plants in front of us, kind of like the Garden of Eden, these 4 girls. My dad was like, oh yeah, over my dead body.
And we had a lot of experiences there where we would practice really hard, work really hard, and then we would go into the studio and record what we had rehearsed.
One day we were all going to go horseback riding at the Spahn Ranch, which was an old movie ranch. I think it was just barely outside of Chatsworth in Simi Valley or somewhere thereabouts. And we drove in, and it hadn't been kept up. It looked pretty bad, but we didn't think too much about it. We were really up for riding horses. And we got off out of the car, we walked on over, but it was a very strange day. We felt eerie from the very minute we stepped onto that Spahn Ranch. We got on our horses. It was crazy. The Tex Watson was there, and quite a few of the other Manson family members, and we really felt like it was one of those experiences that we had to have been watched over by God, because we honestly, at 2 or 3 points, didn't feel like we were ever going to leave that ranch. Especially when we finished our ride. We'd been riding all day long, and Cupid, I don't know if you remember that nickname, but he was actually a pretty good looking guy, and he was hanging really close to me that day. I'll never forget. Very interested, wanted me to come back and kind of do a dating thing, and I just kind of played along, because at that particular point in time I had this inner feeling, just whatever you do, don't make waves right now. This was a very scary thing. It was almost the kind of thing where you felt like as you were riding the horses, someone was going to jump out of a tree and kind of grab you, and that's going to be the last anybody heard of you. So we got back after our little horse ride, and we got off the horses, and it was really scary, because the horses had sores on them, and we were really feeling kind of creepy, and we thought, well, let's hurry and go jump in the car, and we didn't get out of there quick enough.
Okay, well, years later, the sad thing about it was that home was the home where Charlie Manson and his crazy people, followers, had killed Sharon Tate and all the wonderful people that were there that night.
It was truly a heartbreaking, dark period of time in all of our lives here in LA and throughout the world. Anyone that heard about that horrific thing that took place.
We were in the business, and it was really hard, and there were so many things, demanded of us and asked of us, but there was a lot of things we couldn't do, we wouldn't do, we didn't want to do, because we were raised Mormon, and we had our standards and things that we wanted to do. But during the interim, there was a few things that we fell, where I'm now back to being a Mormon now, but during the in-between time for myself, there was a lot of downfall and things, and I hope I didn't hurt anybody, and I'm sorry if I did, but life is life, and you live and learn, and that's the only thing you can do. All as I know is that we went through a lot. Our parents went through a lot. It was really hard for my parents to see us struggle, and it was really hard for us to watch our parents struggle with our growing up and becoming women instead of little cute girls that they could more or less control. And now the boundaries were being lifted, and all over in Hollywood, everybody was peace, love, waterbeds, granola, sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole thing. And it was really being shoved at us and thrown at us. And we were kicking and screaming, but then eventually some kind of softened, and, you know, life is life, and that's what happens. But we all struggled, and we had wonderful experiences. We had so many fantastic things happen. We met so many awesome people.
Tonight we're going to feature 4 young ladies on the show. And you probably saw them a few years ago on the Danny Kaye show when they looked like this. They're still very charming, lovely, and very, very talented, but they've grown up a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, the Clingers.
It's really tough. Here we were, little girls on all the variety shows, and yet Melody and Peggy were years older than Deborah and I, and they wanted to become young women. They wanted to grow up.
That's what I was at about that point. I wanted to be an individual, but I was kind of being tethered by the family.
And I really felt like I was a bit of a pain in the butt, because I was holding on to the bobby socks and the little kind of little girl dresses so that we would stay the little darlings of television, Danny Kaye's little darlings. And it made it difficult because they were wanting to date, and Deborah and I were still enough younger that we weren't into that. And as time went on and we all became teenagers, the complexities of those little problems as you start growing up became even more vivid and more visible. Our dad was standing guard 24/7 because we had guys that were, even one fellow I remember slept all night on the top of our house waiting to possibly get a peek of us when we were leaving the house that day. And my dad happened to walk outside and woke him up, and he jumped off the roof, and Daddy kind of chased him away. So there were just tons of things like that happened throughout our teenage year. Can you imagine 4 teenage daughters, and my poor dad, we were a full-time job, personal manager and protector and everything else. He was the greatest. We never could have asked for a more phenomenal father.
So the girls had an opportunity to be on the Smothers Brothers shows and a couple of other television shows at the time, but they couldn't always go on playing their instruments. They wanted them to be a little softer. I was always a big Beatle fan, and right about that time, an album came out that had a Beatles song on it called Blackbird. And we sat in their living room, and I played guitar and taught them the notes that I was playing on the guitar. And they each one sang the note, all a cappella. I mean, I played along at the beginning, but all a cappella. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. They learned these things just like that, and they sang it so beautifully, you know. And because they're sisters, they have that family kind of blend. And they sang it on one of the television shows, and it was something I was always proud of. They just were so great. I was so proud of them.
Take your second eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of a dark blackbird singing in the dead of
I was the oldest of 9 kids, and being the oldest one, I had a lot of responsibility. My parents kind of expected a lot of me since I was the oldest, and I was, you know, the head of the little kids, the head of the kids. And then when we got into the band era, or the group, I always, in fact, I think we brought it with us. I carried a pitch pipe with us all the time that gave us the right pitch. I'll have Patsy show it to you later. And so I had a pitch pipe with us always, because always we would sing at the drop of a hat. I mean, we would go someplace and someone would say, why don't you sing a song? And we sang. We would sing for 2 and 3 or 4 or 5 songs at a time. That was one of the things that we did on a regular basis. People would come over to our house and Mom and Dad would say, why don't you sing blah, 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 sing the new version of this, sing that. And we did it. We sang every time we were asked. We never said no. We never balked at anything until I got a little more into my later teenage years. And then going on the road became a little more restrained for me. I wanted to kind of be a young adult woman and have my freedom, which I did have my freedom. And now when I look back on it now, I had such a privilege of being a singer and being on stage and, you know, touring all over. It was such a great opportunity that I wasted, but still I loved it. It was great, but I wanted to be a normal person. But how can you have the best of both worlds? It was just a tug of war, back and forth and back and forth. So I kind of made my parting later on, about when I was 21, and everybody kept on with their thing. I went back. I would work with them. We practiced. We sang together. We did a lot of performances. Even though I was out of the band, we still worked together quite a lot. Peggy was getting up there with me. We were both turning into be a little bit of rebel rousers together. Patsy and Debbie were trying to hold us down, because when the world pulls, you're trying to stay with your family, but the world's pulling. And the feelings are real tender and real gentle, and yet they get to be real tough. Then men come around, boys, and things get really thrown out of shape then, because it's hard to hold girls down when guys are calling and coming around and creeping around, and it got to be a real burden for my father. He was he always said, you guys stay with the family, and you love the family, and we love the Lord, and we did. We loved the Lord. We loved the church. We loved everything we did. We did it all of the way. But there were just things that came up that took the place of the specialness of other things we shouldn't have worried about. I moved to Colorado. I got married and moved to Colorado, and that kind of broke the whole family, the whole group up.
We broke up in 1970.
Peggy, my sister, she's just barely younger than I am, about, I don't know, a year and a half, a year and 9 months. She and I were as thick as thieves, close as could be, and we were growing up a lot together. She and I more faster than Deborah and Patsy, because we were just a little bit older, but Peggy was always a little bit older than me, even though she was younger. I got married, moved to Colorado, and she moved to Colorado a year or 2, maybe 3 years after I moved there. And she was in a singing group called Gerard. They were a great band. She and I did a lot of recording in Boulder, Colorado. We worked together, and we had a blast there. But at the same time, things got out of hand, and I don't know what else to say. She died.
Wow. Words can't even be formed of how I felt the day when I heard that my beloved sister Peggy had passed away. She was like the glue in our group, in our family. She was that all-encompassing person, wasn't she? She was just amazing, and I don't want to make her into something that she wasn't, but she was truly an amazing person. She had the heart of 10,000 lions, didn't she? She was amazing. And I just felt such a loss. It was very hard for me to express my my pain through all that. But it took me a long time to really, really realize that she was gone. I kept wanting to not believe that, because I felt like she was my twin. We were like so much alike, weren't we? And I missed her so much, but I wouldn't let that show. I don't think I really broke down and cried about it until it was probably 3 or 4 months later. I really had a breakdown after about 3 or 4 months, but it was a great loss to our family, to the music industry, to the people that she knew. It was just a great loss.
And we had been out to a restaurant, bar, club, and we had been invited to after hours, so it was pretty late. Hung around, and then a friend took me home, and she was just doing the wrong kind of things, the wrong kind of drugs. And when she died, and she did them all together, she was also doing a little Valium and just went to sleep, and that was it. Found her in the morning, but did you find out about it at night?
We found out about it right before we were going to sing and do this performance.
Just the night before, I had talked to her on the phone. She was so happy she was going to be getting married, and had been recording up at Caribou Ranch in Colorado, and was so happy, on top of the world. I said, it's impossible.
The day that my sister Peggy died, I got a telephone call that morning early saying that Melody, Peggy had died. I was confused. I didn't know what to think. She said it again in the right order, which just my mind flatlined. I went absolutely blank. I jumped in my car. I drove to her house. I came in the house and they said, "Don't go in there, don't go in there." And I said, "I'm going in there. She's just asleep. Don't worry, she'll wake up. I'm here. I'm her best. I just don't." So I ran in there and I grabbed a hold of her and I tried to shake her, and I could feel the coldness and the stillness, and my mind just went totally blank. I was so freaked out and sad and miserably lonely and just confused, and I had to call my parents. The first thing I thought of was that I had to call my family, and it was the hardest thing I ever did, was to call and tell my dad that my sister was not with us anymore. So my life from then on was real bad for a long time, really, really bad, because I was so dependent on her and she on me. We were so close, but it was just not the same anymore at all.
The main ingredient to success is talent, passion, and a commitment to what you're doing. Those girls, the Klinger sisters, had every one of those ingredients. And if they were starting today, I believe that they would be one of the biggest groups in the world.
If you go out and collect the Klingers' music and you dig around thrift shops and junkyards, a lot of this music's out of print now, you will cry. You will steal their ideas. And then you will say, wow, nobody knew. Better late than never. I want you to draw these conclusions. The Klingers, first all-girl band in the world. May they forever radiate every drawing room and every universe and every padded cell that plays their music.